Hello, AP Chemistry students, and welcome to your Unit 4 of your AP Summer Work, which is going to be all about the periodic table. So let's talk about Lesson 1. So remember there was this thing that was called the periodic law. So that means that when elements are arranged in order of increasing atomic mass, periodic or repeating trends occur. We will talk about all of these trends in detail, but we need to remember that this is all because of the fact that they were in order of increasing atomic mass. And in 1869, Mendeleev is the one that came up with that way. Him and his students studied that according to the trends, based on this pattern of repetition, that conductivity, ductility, malleability, etc., all of those different things came about all because he arranged them in order of increasing atomic mass. Now, remember, the periodic table is arranged in order of increasing atomic number. So we have periods. Periods represent horizontal rows on the periodic table, and there are 7 of those. And these numbers are also representative in the number of energy levels where the electrons can be found. So there are 7 periods on the periodic table, which means that at a maximum right now, there's going to be 7 energy levels when you write your electron configurations. Groups, on the other hand, are going to be your vertical columns on the periodic table, and they're numbered 1 through 18. There are going to be some differences on other tables, so we'll make sure that we point those out when we come across those. Remember, elements in the same group have the same number of valence electrons and also similar properties. So let's talk about these groups. So we have the alkali metals, which are group 1. They are very reactive. They're not found in elemental form, which means that these elements are always going to be found in compounds. They have 1 valence electron. They have an oxidation number of +1. They have a metallic character that will increase as you go down that group. So when we're looking at the alkali metals, francium is at the bottom. That's going to be the one with the highest metallic character. And they have a very strong exothermic reaction with water. So let's talk about group 2. Group 2 are the alkaline earth metals. They're not as reactive as group 1. They have 2 valence electrons in them. They have a +2 charge. Then we get into the transition metals, which is our group 3 through 12. They form colored compounds and solutions with various charges. Remember, these are the ones that are going to change their oxidation numbers depending on whether they give up 1 electron, 2 electron to gain stability. The halogens are group 17. They form diatomic molecules. They mostly have a -1 charge. However, they can have other possible charges. And they have 7 valence electrons, and they are very reactive. And finally, we have group 18. They're also known as the noble gases or inert gases because they do not react. The exception is xenon. In rare cases, it will react. We will talk about that later when we get close to it, when we talk about the periodic table. They don't have a charge. They have 8 valence electrons in their outer shell, and they're monatomic, which means that they exist only as 1 atom in nature. So you need to memorize the following. You need to memorize what the metal properties are. They're on the left side of the periodic table. They're great conductors of electricity and heat. They're ductile, which means they can be drawn into wires. They're malleable, which means they can be molded. They're lustrous, which means they can be shiny. They're solids except for mercury. They lose electrons when they bond. And then you also need to memorize the opposite, which is going to be for nonmetals, which means that they're on the right side of the periodic table. They're not conductors of electricity and heat. They're brittle. They're dull. They're mostly gases except for bromine, which is a liquid. They tend to gain electrons when bonded. And then we have these guys, which are the metalloids. The metalloids have properties of both metals and nonmetals, such as they're poor conductors, but they might be shiny. And they're also found in the middle of the periodic table and only include elements which a whole side is touched by that staircase. So here is a picture of the periodic table where your metalloids can be found. So there are 8 of those. So let's talk about metallic trends. So remember, we talked about this in the beginning, but as you go to the left across a period, So as you go from right to left across the period and down, your metallic character is going to increase. So francium is going to be the most metallic, and fluorine is going to be the least metallic. So now let's talk about the octet rule. Atoms will gain and or lose electrons in order to form stable noble gas configuration, so 8 electrons in the valence shell. So hydrogen, lithium, beryllium, boron only have 2 valence electrons like helium. That is because they can only gain that many. They won't have much more past that. Metals tend to have 1 to 3 valence electrons, so metals will lose electrons to complete their octet. Nonmetals tend to have 5 to 7 valence electrons, so they will gain electrons to complete their octet.